It has been a project that is a long time in coming in terms of an initiative that we work on. We've been doing this, and you'll see in just a moment how long we've been doing it together in cooperation with NCDOT, but it's a true public-private or private-public partnership. And it's also a partnership with all the other partners in concert throughout the region. So at this point, I am going to turn the conversation over to our I-40 Partnership Regional Executive, and that is Ms. Meredith McDiarmid, who I've known for many years, and she's going to offer some welcome remarks to the group.
Thanks, Joe. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. Again, welcome everybody. It's good to see everybody participating this afternoon, especially it being a Friday afternoon, as Joe mentioned. It was good to see and hear all of you again, and even if I don't see and hear you, we know you're there. Just wanted to elaborate a little on the goals and focus areas of the partnership for those of you who may be new to our discussions. Joe mentioned the breadth of where we're focused on I-40, but what we're trying to do there is improve that travel experience for everybody that uses I-40, which again helps the Department of Transportation, helps our partners, helps the business community. What we try to do is identify projects and funding opportunities. We look for active traffic management strategies. We're also given some prioritization to transit. And through all of that, we are strengthening relationships, maybe even sometimes establishing relationships. And those are certainly appreciated, even outside of the partnership. Some of our successes, just to note a few, are our bus on shoulder system. And as you can see, we've been meeting since 2009. It's hard to believe it's been that long, but it has. And throughout that time, we've been able to identify some interchange improvements on I-40, Aviation, Harrison Avenue, South Saunders Street, to name a few. We've implemented bus on shoulder system in partnership with transit agencies. We've introduced a concept of express shoulder managed lanes, which is planned for I-40 at some point in the future. In addition, we've given some detail in some of the things we've published: one pagers for synchronized super streets, dual left flashing yellow arrows, and we've developed a mobility toolbox. Again, that's just to make some of the highlights, but we do appreciate you being here, and we're looking forward to our agenda today. And we'll go to the next slide, and we'll talk a little bit about what we're gonna present today. We're gonna have the Division 5 talk about active construction projects, and one of those even goes into Division 7 as well in Orange County. Things that are upcoming in terms of projects and some studies as well, and give an update on have we recovered from a traffic standpoint, and also some of the funding challenges that the department has had, and any final remarks. So exciting agenda. Again, in true Joe Milazzo fashion, it will be fast-paced to get a lot of information packed into this. And so sit back and buckle in, and we'll talk about some good things. Thank you.
That sounds good. Well, before we begin the next piece of the meeting, I want to go over a couple brief remarks in terms of logistics. Everyone on the Zoom, which is all of us, we have a chat at the bottom. And if you click on that, that's where you can put your questions in. So if you do that, I'm going to do a sample one right now. And so you'll see that if you look in the chat, I mean, you're going to get the answer from him directly, but put down in brackets who the question is for, just to make sure I haven't missed it, and then what your question would be. And so that would be good. We're going to take one question at most after each presentation, And each respondent's going to be very, very high level responses, 30-second answers. If it's going to take longer, we'll push it to the end if we have more time. Other than that, Natalie, anything else we need to talk about in terms of logistics?
As I find my unmute button, just a reminder to keep yourselves muted as well, except for the speakers. And thank you all for joining us today. Brandon,
Yeah.
Are you logged in okay with your audio and video?
We're about to find out. So while we're waiting for him, I do want to mention something quickly for all of our participants, which is we are going to activate a countdown timer to help everybody with their timing. And so you'll see that, and there'll be some very happy chimes as they get near the end of the presentation. We'll go that way. So Brandon, are you available though? And if you are, can you unmute yourself? What is it? What is the unmute on the phone? Is it star what? Do you remember, Natalie? Star 6 or something? I'm trying to remember.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
All right, good. All right. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Brandon Jones, Division 5 engineer, and I want to run through some quick updates on active projects and talking about the status of Beautify, Fortify, and an update on litter in the region. So go ahead, Natalie, next. Here's the thank you. All right, so kind of a theme today is out with the old, in with the new. Aviation Parkway interchange is our first topic. So out with the old, heavy congestion, I-40 westbound traffic exiting the southbound aviation. Traffic consistently backed up to I-40, creating safety issues. The westbound I-40 on-ramp acceleration lane was too short, creating merge issues on I-40. Next. The 4-lane bridge cross-section was functionally obsolete and inadequate to handle the demands. Next. So in with the new, $36 million investment was let to contract in February of 2018 and provides the following improvements. I-40 westbound movement to southbound aviation is provided by the new loop in the northwest quadrant. This loop opened in early 2020, 2 weeks ahead of schedule. I-40 eastbound to northbound aviation has dual left turns. The new 6-lane bridge accommodates true dual through movements as well as lanes for exit and turning movements. This bridge was opened in November 2020. The westbound I-40 auxiliary lane connecting Aviation Parkway on-ramp to the off-ramp for Airport Boulevard is been constructed. Although NCDOT was severely impacted by COVID to traffic volumes from a revenue standpoint, there were several 2020 closures associated with the construction that were aided due to the reduced volumes. So in early April 2020, traffic volumes were down 54%, allowing us to perform a weekend closure of both directions of I-40 to demolish the old bridge. And in pre-COVID, I-40 between Harrison Avenue and I-540 carried between 150 and 170,000 cars per day. Next. Moving to the Airport Boulevard interchange, out with the old. Once again, heavy congestion for I-40 westbound traffic to Airport Boulevard southbound. Heavy queuing of exiting I-40 traffic, heavy congestion and through movements on Airport Boulevard. Next. As with the Aviation Parkway bridge, this existing bridge was functionally obsolete and inadequate to handle the traffic demands as well. In with the new, $56 million investment was let to contract in September 2019 and provides the following improvements. Next. Construction of a diverging diamond interchange. So the DDI configuration crosses Airport Boulevard traffic to the left-hand side of the road. Next. The traffic entering and exiting the interstate does not have to cross opposing traffic to make the turn. Basically, the left turns act as traditional free-flow right turns. This simplifies signal operations, providing for increased capacity. Next. So although many DDI bridges are single bridge, like the one seen here in the Charlotte area, our plans at Airport Boulevard call for the 2 separate bridges which will be built on either side of the existing bridge. If you have not driven through a DDI, get ready. We have many more coming in the area, including 3 being built with the next 2 projects being discussed. The completion date for this project is February 2024. Next. So we're also in the process of widening 14 miles of I-40 from I-440 to Cornwallis Road in Johnston County. Next. This $360 million design build project will add 2 lanes in each direction of I-40. The design includes reconfiguration of several interchanges along the corridor. Here you can see the newly completed flyover ramp from 440 to 40 East, which shifted to the east from the original alignment. Next. So keeping with the out with the old, in with the new theme, maintenance of existing traffic is always a challenge as you build new, you shift traffic, you demolish old, and you once again build new. Next. The project also includes the reconfiguration of the I-40 NC42 interchange. It will be a diverging diamond interchange with additional access to Cleveland School Road. There will also be a diverging diamond interchange added at the Jones Sausage Road exit interchange area near the new Amazon distribution facility in Garner. Next. So getting back to NC42 at Cleveland School Road, these 2 areas are connected by a collector distributor system. So we're pushing to get the new lanes open from 440 to US 70 bypass by the end of next year, with the remaining work completion likely in 2024. Next. All right, so the East End Connector in Durham County. So we're completing the East End Connector in Durham to provide a direct connection between the Durham Freeway and Miami Boulevard, US 70 and NC 147, 2 major east-west highways in the triangle, and improve access between I-40 and I-85. Next. The $142 million project began 6 years ago. Next. Although only about a mile separates 147 and 70, this project is complex due to maintaining traffic on 147 and 70. Majority of the work was bridge construction and coordinating with 2 railroad companies. Next. Although we continue to push to open the connector by the end of 2021, a spring 2022 opening is more realistic. Next. As we place traffic on the connector, next, there's going to be a new route designation included. That's going to be I-885. Next. So I-885 will be signed from I-40 along current NC 147 through the East End Connector and then along current US 70 to I-85. Next. Now we're going to transition to the Beltline project, U-2719. So out with the oldest section of I-440 built in the 60s from just north of Wade Avenue to south of Walnut Street. This project does not include redesigning of the I-40 interchange, but the old section of the Beltline was a 4-lane section. The pavement structure was at the end of its life. All the bridges were functionally obsolete. All the interchanges were outdated designs and had bottleneck congestion issues throughout the corridor. Next. So this $400 million investment is being built by a design build contract awarded in October of 2018. Work began shortly later in July of 2019. So in with the new, modernization of the entire corridor, including pavement structure, bridges, interchange designs, and going to 6 lanes. Next. Here at the Wade Avenue interchange, the existing interchange is served by 3 loops, which create slower speeds, create weaving issues. The new interchange will only have 1 loop in the southwest quadrant. The current main line is served by 2 bridges. The expansion creates a 3rd bridge, with the westernmost bridge being part of a collector distributor access for the interchange with Hillsborough Street. Next. Moving down to the Hillsborough Street interchange, the design of the interchange is really just a larger footprint of the current interchange to allow for additional lanes on 440 and better movement between Wade Avenue and Hillsborough Street. Next. The proposed Western Boulevard interchange probably offers the most unique change along the corridor, moving from the current flyover and 3-loop design, which creates many weave issues and slow exits and merges, to a new diverging diamond interchange. Next. Jones Franklin Road interchange. This proposed design modifies the loop in the northeast quadrant and aligns the southbound 440 off-ramps with Fort Sumter Road. Next. So on this slide, you can see some recently completed aspects of this project, shifting to the new Ramp D at Wade Avenue, shifting to the temporary median between Melbourne and Athens, shifting to new Loop C at Wade Avenue. Upcoming work includes shifting the main line to the new structure at Wade Avenue in September of this year. Closure of the Athens Drive Bridge, and that'll be demolished and rebuilt. Starts in October of this year. And then the Western Boulevard DDI closures and shifts starts later this month, and in October, hopefully the DDI completion will be February of 2023, and then shifting to the new bridge at Jones Franklin in January of 2022. Next. So Beautify, Fortify. Now, everybody remembers Project Fortify, which was a project that rebuilt 11.5 miles of I-40 in the Beltline, which included replacing pavement and rehabbing 14 bridges. And we took that project, and you could apply 1% funding to a landscape project afterwards. So we had coordination with RTA, Convention Visitors Bureau, with the City of Raleigh, and DOT staff. We developed plans that maximize visual impact at a reasonable maintenance cost. We didn't want anything that was going to be a struggle to maintain. So tree removal was part of it, to the clear zone, removal of undergrowth at all wooded interchanges, planting a variety of new trees to add color and enhance the interchanges, a unique design at each interchange, incorporated a few wildflower beds that DOT will maintain, and then incorporated turf management of grass within the quadrants. All the plantings have been completed at this point. They were turned over to the City of Raleigh earlier this year for annual maintenance. Next. So NCDOT's litter management programs are multifaceted. Up in the left-hand corner, you can see as of August 23rd of this year, NCDOT across the state had picked up right at 9 million pounds of litter. We're well over 9 million pounds at this point, but you see all the groups that we rely on that help pick up litter on our system. Adopt a Highway, over 120,000 participants in that program every year, volunteer program. NCDOT's contract litter removal is a big part of success of picking up litter. Our own forces pick up litter almost every single day. Other volunteers, and then our Sponsor a Highway program, which allows businesses, organizations, and individuals to sponsor litter removal along our roadsides. Got to promote our fall litter sweep. It kicks off tomorrow. It's for a 2-week period. So if you have not done so already, please volunteer to pick up litter in your area over the next 2 weeks. Earlier this year, a litter task force was created. Joey Hopkins, my predecessor in this position, along with Joe Milazzo, Denny Edwards with Visit Raleigh, Jim Bealey with Umstead Hotel, Eric Kirks, who's a huge, with Johnston Automotive, is a huge Sponsor a Highway participant, Bill Davidson with GFL Environmental, Joe Diener with Republic Services, and representatives from the home builders of Wake, Durham, and Orange counties. So this task force assisted with spring anti-litter messages through the media, and also developed or in the process of developing a sign that will be placed at local waste station convenience centers to remind drivers to secure their loads. And I just want to leave you with, it takes all of us working together on this litter issue. It is a society issue, but we can all do our parts to shut the door on litter. And with that, I appreciate the time.
Well done. Both timeliness and then also just the breadth of information, the breadth of projects that are happening right now. We're going to immediately go to the next presentation, but what I will remind all of our participants, members, and colleagues and partners that if you do have questions for participants or for speakers, I should say, put those in the chat, put it in brackets, say question for Brandon, question for Dennis, etc. And if there's time, we'll get to them at the very end, but if it's a quick one, we will get to them immediately after one of the presenters. So next up is another colleague and friend, and it's Dennis Jernigan with the North Carolina Turnpike Authority talking about 540 and the under construction project there.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you to those members who were able to come out yesterday for the project tour. We enjoyed having you out, and if opportunity presents itself, you want to set up another meeting, we'd be glad to set up another tour. Natalie, if you'll go to the next slide, please. I'm going to start with just a map of the phase 1 that's currently underway to show that it's actually consists of 3 different projects. The dividing line being at Pierce Olive Road and between US 401 and Fannie Brown. And also in the bottom right, you will see that there are 7 interchanges, 6 new, and completing the NC 55 interchange there at number 1 that are associated with this project. And the next slide is going to show who is building the project. The A and the B, actually all 3 of the projects are joint ventures. You see in the middle underneath the A, B, and C designations who the contractors are, and there are 3 different designers, Gannett, Fleming, HDR, and WSP. and the contracts amount there. And the next click should be an animation that shows you where we are from a progress standpoint. For those of you who may have seen the WRL story a couple of weeks ago, and you may say, wait a minute, that said 35%. That was actually from a construction standpoint. These percentages also include design. Our next slide is going to show you some of the collaborations and the outcome of some collaborations with municipalities. And the next click is an animation. You'll see pin drops. And these are bike ped and multi-use path accommodations that are being facilitated in the project. And the next slide will actually show a list of where those are. And we'll hit that briefly just to show a pretty significant list there of those accommodations. But a picture's worth 1,000 words. So let's jump on into the project photos. The next slide is going to be at NC 55. You may be familiar, we have one bridge now, but on the bottom side, the foreground of the photo, you see the middle bent there for that particular structure and the two end bents that have been completed. We're actually planning on setting girders there within the next couple of weeks. And I did want to mention too, on the previous slide, I skipped it, but when we're talking about the dollar amount, I wanted to let everybody know that out of those contract amounts, $75 million of those contract amounts are committed to DBEs and small business firms. And then when you take into account some of the pre-construction right-of-way activities, we're actually over $80 million. Okay, next slide. Thank you, Natalie. This is East William Street. And you may look and say, well, the bridge looks kind of asymmetrical, it's off-centered there. The reason being is because we collaborated with municipality. They've got a future expansion project here. So we're going ahead and building our bridges long enough to accommodate that. So as you can imagine, the new lanes of East William Street will be on the opposite side there, the top side of the photo. And the next slide, we were talking earlier about pedestrian accommodations. There's actually two culverts in this photo. One is kind of backfilled just above that red line. The one you see there that's highlighted by the bracket is the pedestrian culvert connecting Wood Creek, the two pieces of the Wood Creek community. And we collaborated on this with Holly Springs. And then the next slide is going to show you Sunset Lake Road. We've got a temporary detour that's almost ready to be opened. We're waiting on a few utility poles to be cleared, and we actually crossed Sunset Lake Road twice, and this is one of those crossings. The next slide is, here we go. Next slide, please. It's not moving on my screen. Okay, it actually jumped a couple, but that's fine. This is east of Bells Lake. We're spanning a wetland and environmentally sensitive area. So in addition to the human environments, we're actually sensitive to the natural environment. You're going to see two different photos of bridges that do such, and this is just east of the Bells Lake interchange. And the next slide is going to be a pair of bridges that are future Camp Branch Greenway bridges. There we go. So that greenway is going to be built in the future, but again, we're accommodating that expansion later. The next slide will show you that not all the work is done during the day. This is setting girders on Jordan Road, and this was done at night. So we got some aerial shots of that to show you that we are doing things to minimize our impacts to traffic. Next slide. If you look on the right side, you're going to see some of our noise walls going up. This is in the Sauls Road area. And then the next slide is going to be a trestle. It's got a couple of trestles in there for building the bridges near I-40. This is part of the Swift Creek tributary. And then Natalie, if you'll jump ahead 2 slides, I did want to mention public outreach efforts because I'm short on time. But one of the things we like to do is stay in contact with the folks along the corridor. We didn't let the pandemic stop that. We've gone through virtual meetings, postcards, next door posts to make sure that people are getting the latest and greatest information. And some of the ways they can do that are shown on the next slide. We have a dedicated email account, 800 number, and we've got Twitter handles that you see there. And with that, that's it for me. Thank you.
Well done on a great friend, great organization, and great project. We are so excited about seeing the progress of I-40, and we do appreciate your hospitality there. I have, before we go any further, I'm going to see real quick on something else here in terms of the overall presentation sequence, just going forward. If everybody at home or wherever you're watching the meeting or participating, if you do go to letsgetmoving.org/I-40, you can see the entire agenda We're through that first part of it, and you can see the rest of it there. So letsgetmoving.org/I-40. We are about to begin in just a moment that status of ongoing and upcoming projects and studies. But before I go forward, we did have one question. It's actually for the prior speaker, for Brandon. It's a question about U-2719. When will the Athens Drive bridge replacement start? So Brandon, if you can unmute yourself and just get that last one there. I guess I know you're in the chat, but just everybody can hear the answer.
Yeah, that's scheduled for October 2021, closing down and start demolishing the bridge.
So very soon. Excellent. And thank you for the question, Clint, as well for that. And we will continue on with our presentation. So the next speaker, again, we're going to come back to the I-40, is Miss Laura Sutton. She's with the department. She's going to talk about the I-40 widening in Orange County.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. How are y'all? Natalie, if you can go ahead and start the presentation. So my name is Laura Sutton. I am the team lead for the project management unit in Division 7, 9, and 10. And give you an update on the I-40 as these scheduled timeline rolls in. The environmental document was completed in 19. March of 2019, we started work with a design firm in October of 19. Our preliminary plans were approved in April of 20, and then the project was placed on hold. We worked really hard to try to get that project restarted in cooperation with Division 7. When it was restarted, the decision was made to convert it from bid build to a design build letting and combine it with a safety project W5707C. And so just last month, the project was awarded to the Lane Construction Corporation and HDR as the PEF on that project. Design build team and Lane HDR should be having a kickoff meeting in the sometime this fall. Next slide. So just a quick overview of the project limits. It's about 13 miles long. It starts west of Dimmick's Mill and I-85 connection, and it continues on through the major interchanges at Old NC 86, 86, and New Hope Church Road. The W5707C is a safety project that reduces removes the left lane drop and actually takes the right lane drop westbound on 40 and drops it into 15501. Next slide. The schedule really quickly, we already talked about the hold and the procurement for design build. So the design build team is in design and right-of-way acquisition, and the ICT, intermediate contract time, for the completion of the safety project will be November of this year, the end of November, and the project is anticipated to complete construction in September of 2025. That's it for me.
And that is a great summary of a needed project. That'll be the last 2-lane each way section of the freeway between Johnston County all the way over west of Winston-Salem. So what a great asset, not just for the triangle, but for the entire Piedmont Crescent or Metropolitan Crescent of the state. So we are very excited about that one as well. If you look, everyone, at your agendas now, and again, that's at letsgetmoving.org/I-40. We're now going to go to some additional projects where there's upgrades or potential upgrades to freeways or modernizations or impacts, all related to 40 or related routes. We're going to bring back Brandon Jones again from the department. He's going to begin with Highway 70 and go to a few others. And so we're going to redo that. And we're going to return the clock back on in just a moment as well. So give us just a moment while we transition there. And again, as a reminder for everyone, if you do have questions, just like Cliff did earlier, just go ahead and put those questions in the chat there, and that should work out great. So with that, we are going to make sure we got that right. This is just a moment. Let's see. So Brandon, are you ready to go?
I am.
Okay, that sounds good. So you are live. And your audio is working great. You can have at it for the upcoming projects.
Thanks, Joe. All right, go ahead. Next slide, Natalie. I want to talk about 3 upcoming projects that are in the development phase right now. The US 70 freeway conversion from 540 to I-85. The US 1 freeway conversion from I-540 to Wake Forest. And then US 64 west of in Cary and Apex. Let's start with US 70 next. The US 70 corridor between 540 and 885, the East End Connector project I just spoke of, is being developed as 2 different projects that will create a freeway section. U5518 is from 540 to TW Alexander. Next. So the preferred alternative was chosen in 2019 after 2 rounds of public meetings in 2017 and 2018. It's called Alternate 2 Revised. It creates an interchange at Briar Creek Parkway and TW Alexander. Next. There will also be an interchange to the west of this location at the extension of Aviation Parkway at US 70. The project is planned for design build letting in November of 2024. Next. So moving into Durham, U5720 will tie into U5518 and extend the freeway to the new 885 interchange. We are currently developing the service road plans with the intention of holding additional public meetings this winter. Next. There are currently 2 different alignments, the north and the south. The goal is to have a preferred alternative selected in 2022 and continue working toward the environmental document. We will also continue to coordinate with Durham County and the city to assure adequate connectivity issues for all modes of transportation are addressed. Project schedule is to begin right-of-way purchases in July of 2026. However, construction remains unfunded in our current STIP, which goes through fiscal year 2029. Next. So moving over to US 1, it's the U5307's conversion of US 1, better known as Capitol Boulevard, to a freeway from 540 up to Wake Forest. Next. Currently, we are working on the design of the service road network, and completion of the environmental document is scheduled for next spring. We plan to have a public meeting this fall. It won't be September, but later this fall. The overall project is broken into 4 sections. The A sections from 540 to north of Durant, Perry Creek Road, planned for a design build let in October of 2024, about a $291 million investment. The B section extends it to north of Burlington Mills Road. That's scheduled for right-of-way in October of 24, construction letting in October of 26, $165 million investment. Next section goes to NC 98 Business, right-of-way in 2024, construction letting October 2026 as well, $142 million investment. The last section up to Wake Forest is right-of-way 2028, and the construction letting is unfunded in our current STIP. Next. So moving over to US 64 corridor, U5301 includes improvements to 64 from US 1 in Cary to just west of Laura Duncan Road in Apex. A preferred alternative was chosen after public meetings in 2019. Next. Project will improve traffic flow and safety along this corridor by an additional through lane in each direction, creating a tight diamond interchange at both Laura Duncan and Lake Pine Drive, as well as grade separating Shepherd's Vineyard Drive. Next. So moving east, the corridor takes on reduced conflict intersections until the grade separated modified quadrant intersection at Edinburgh. The current schedule for this project is right-of-way July 2025 and construction letting in July 2028. I appreciate the opportunity to bring you up to speed on these 3 projects. Thank you.
We appreciate you taking the time to do that, Brandon. And these are fantastic projects at various timings before construction begins, but all coming. The business community has been supportive of those for some time, all 3 of these. We would love to see them accelerate. To do that in some ways is going to require a funding piece, which will come up a little bit later in the conversation. I do want to mention briefly for these projects and just in general for everyone, since I know the questions, and sometimes it's hard even just to think of something because the presentations are coming quickly. If you think of them afterwards, even 2 or 3 presenters afterwards, just go ahead and put it in the chat. Just remember to put in question for, in this case, Brandon, and specifically if it's for one of the projects, that would be great. But again, we appreciate the partnership with you, Brandon, and with the division, with the department. anything we can do to get Capitol Boulevard working better will be of tremendous support by the entire region, and similar things for 64 and 70, which of course is a parallel for 40. And speaking of making 40 better, let's turn over and talk about the I-40 Managed Freeway Project, and that's Derek Lewis with the department who's going to talk to us about that.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Next slide. You can go ahead to the next one too. Right here is basically the limits of the I-6006 Managed Motorways study, which is from 54 to Wade Avenue. We will mention the fact that we've also got additional managed motorway studies on U6101, which is the rest of 40 all the way to 42, the 440 section around Raleigh, the US 1 out to 540, and the 87 out to 540. What the managed motorways is concerning is mostly the coordinated adaptive ramp metering on the corridor. And you can go to the next slide. And there you see, we call it CARM, but it's coordinated adaptive ramp metering. It's where you put ramp meters that are coordinated between the ramp meters so you can maintain the throughput on the freeway, trying to control the number of vehicles on the freeway so that you don't reach capacity and pass beyond capacity. The whole point of CARM is to keep you kind of at or close to the edge of that line, but not cross over. You provide storage on the ramps to accommodate queued vehicles, and you have coordination between ramps so that no one ramp becomes excessively queued, and you get to share the capacity that way. Next slide. Another part of the managed motorways study was advanced traffic management system mechanisms, which is ATMS. In that you could have dynamic lane assignment, dynamic speed limit, dynamic shoulder lanes, dynamic junction control, or queue warnings. And the design and estimates that we put forth for the I-6006, we had gantries so that you could support the potential for dynamic speed limits and definitely dynamic lane assignments. Next slide. Right here you see basically, I'm going to go to that blocking is the benefits of it. And in the total delay, we were seeing approximately a 22%, almost 23% improvement in delay for total delay. Average speed went up by about 6, almost 7%. And the delay for miles traveled was a reduction in about 23.5. Realize these are conservative because once you go beyond capacity, you can actually almost lose 50% of your capacity once you get into breakdown. So these numbers right now are conservative, but that's what the analysis was trying to indicate, what we thought the potential benefits would be. Next slide. And here you got the range of cost. We did the ramp metering and the ATMS separately. So you have a range from 72 to almost 85 million. We are going to open up the study to get into some operations costs that we did not address in this study that was completed in July. And so this might change a little bit. And also we might update it with it being already a year old. Next slide. And that was it. Back to you, Joe.
Got it. Well, that's a lot in a short amount of time. Let's get moving with that for sure. I got a question that actually did come in. It was a direct question from me, which is fine. And that is, are there any studies currently underway to accelerate any of these projects? So whether it's this managed freeway, managed motorway, I guess you could bring this back towards some of the other ones, such as the 70 reconstruction, the US 1 conversion to freeway, 64 upgrades. Are there studies underway not to so much study the project, but ways to accelerate these projects where traffic is problematic now and going to continue with some of the new economic development projects that are coming in there. Is that work actively happening? And I'm not sure if that question should be directed more towards yourself, Derek, when you look at the long-term pieces. Maybe that's something we hold for a little bit later on. And it also could be for Brandon himself as our division executive. So I'll leave it. Derek, any initial thoughts on that? Or Brandon, if you want
I
to
would
offer
defer to
commentary?
Brandon.
Yeah, okay, that sounds good.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think, Joe, when you look at our upcoming projects, let's take US 1 in particular, and it's divided into 4 sections. That last section, the very northern section that goes to Wake Forest, is unfunded in our current STIP as far as construction goes. That would be one that, if funding was right, could be accelerated because we're developing that section with the rest. The remaining would be difficult to accelerate just because of times needed for finishing the plans, getting to right-of-way, moving utilities. There's a considerable amount of time needed just to get to that point to be ready for that first section to let later in 2024 as design build.
That makes sense.
US 70 is one that potential, but in our coordination with the city and county, we have a lot to work through from a connectivity standpoint. So that's very important we get that right on that project. So it would probably be difficult to move the Durham section ahead, and the Wake section is tight as well, just from a project development standpoint.
Okay. That's still, I appreciate that directness and the specific information about each of those projects, and also a good question from one of our members as well. So appreciate that question. We're going to keep moving on here, and we're going to look at, again, staying with I-40, staying with the modernization theme, the improvement theme. Here's one about a concept called transit priority shoulder, and this is going to be a tag team presentation from a couple of our member firms, Corey Wilmot from AECOM, Andrew Bell from HNTB. They're going to briefly talk about this concept and how this might move forward. So, gentlemen.
Thanks, Joe. Good afternoon, everyone. You can go to the next slide, please. So the goals for this project set forth by RTA were to identify a solution that would provide connections to the 5 future BRT routes and the commuter rail line, and develop a lower cost near-term option that could maintain a transit speed of 45 miles per hour, regardless of the travel conditions in the adjacent lanes. And next slide. We started our alternative screening process by looking at the potential transit priority solutions that were screened based on 2 criteria: the ability to allow the buses to operate at a speed of 45 miles per hour, and the ability to maintain or require minimal changes to the existing infrastructure to keep costs lower and to decrease the implementation time. The result was none of the solutions on this slide here were actually met all criteria. Next slide. So after our initial analysis did not reveal a good solution, our team decided to further explore a bus on shoulder option that could attain a higher speed of 45 miles per hour. The result was a transit priority shoulder that uses the inside shoulder of I-40. Note that the existing BOS program operates at a maximum speed of 35 miles per hour on the outside shoulder. To implement this concept safely, the inside shoulder would need to be expanded to 14 feet to allow for sufficient buffers. Next slide. The results of our pre-feasibility study showed that the overall no additional right-of-way is needed. Our recommendation is for a full feasibility study to be completed to further vet out potential issues and evaluate costs. HNTB is currently working on a feasibility study for these 2 segments, and I'm going to turn over to Andrew to discuss their work.
All right, thanks, Corey. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, so we took a quick look, a high-level estimate look at the section of I-40 between NC 147, future 885, and then I-540. This is a critical segment of I-40, one with a lot of constraints, a lot of existing interchanges, and so we wanted to get an idea of what what this could cost. We looked at several scenarios, several different lane widths, and came up with the high level initial estimate of 50 million to 60 million just for this section, depending on the lane widths and potentially some design exceptions if we can get into that. So yeah, that's just basically what we did. Just a small nugget of the overall study that AECOM did. All right, next slide. I think that's it. All right.
Yep. Excellent work. And you're just going to continue on here with the next piece. Yep. Good job.
Keep on rolling. All right. Sounds good. All right. Next slide. All right. So HNTV has been looking into modernizing I-40 between 540 and the Durham Freeway. We've been looking at this over the course of the last year and a half, 2 years. So it's brought about a lot of interesting conversations between clients and stakeholders and other members of the community. Next slide, please. A lot of the characteristics are out there in front of us today. It is the highest, has the highest AADT in North Carolina, close to 200,000 vehicles per day back in pre-COVID times. Traveling this every day, I can tell you that it feels like it's getting about up to there again. So that's good for us. Good news. We have 2 system interchanges, 540 and NC 147. We have 3 closely spaced service interchanges, obviously with Davis and Miami and Page, and a critical rail bridge that is just west of Miami Boulevard. That is a big piece of this study as well. All right, next slide. The current design concept is based on really one-way frontage roads that travel along each direction of I-40. There are slip ramps to and from frontage roads that provide access to and from 40. Tight diamond configurations minimize right-of-way impacts and everything. And then the loops are removed as well. All right, next slide. All right, we've met with stakeholders. We had several meetings over the spring. You can see the ones we met with. We got lots of great feedback, lots of things for us to consider and follow up on. And that's what we're doing now. We're implementing a lot of these things now. All right, next slide. All right, so the next step is for us to look at some different considerations and different treatments to allow for some more access, some more movement, and some more just considerations of how we can better serve the businesses, residences in the area, and maximize the efficiency of 40 in this corridor. All right, next slide. All right, so you see there are next steps, additional analysis, design revisions, more stakeholder involvement. That's super critical for this project. It will continue to be a critical component of this corridor for a long time. All right, that's it.
Fantastic. Great presentation, Andrew, and also great presentation again, Corey, in the previous one. Very excited to see that concept. We all know that's the most, as you said, the most used section of any freeway in the state. So getting it modernized, making it safer would be good. It's a very good design. Excited to see that thing move forward. Speaking of I-40, I want to clarify something. Earlier, somebody sent me a note. I really appreciate that. I had mentioned getting that the I-40 widening Orange County would get us to more than 2 lanes each way from Johnston all the way to Winston. It's not quite right. There is a gap between PTI or Piedmont Tri International Airport and the east side of Winston-Salem. That would still be 2 lanes each way. There's a parallel portion of Business 70, or what I think it's 421 now. So you'd have multiple ways to get through there, but technically on the I-40 main line, that little piece would be 2 lanes each way. So I misspoke and I apologize, and I appreciate the clarification on that. We're now going to go to the interactive portion of the event. And this is a video, I believe, on the Triangle Bikeway, which parallels or would parallel I-40. And it's not long, about 2 minutes. And so we'll just let that happen.
Welcome to the Triangle Bikeway Study, a detailed evaluation of a regional biking and pedestrian facility connecting each jurisdiction along the I-40 corridor from Chapel Hill to Raleigh. All around the country, communities and state DOTs are looking at highway corridors in a new way, as valuable resources to move people, not just cars. Highway corridors are being activated to carry transit, bikes, and pedestrians while maintaining traditional and growing highway functions. US 36 Bikeway is an example. The Bikeway connects Boulder and Denver, Colorado with 18 miles of shared use path. Designed in concert with improvements to transit, the project is envisioned as a complete corridor to serve this fast-growing region. The Triangle Bikeway project begins at 15501 and NC 54 in Chapel Hill and travels 17 miles east to the pedestrian bridge over I-440 in Raleigh. We utilize the existing American Tobacco Trail bridge to cross to the south side of I-40. We shift to NC 54 through RTP, which will connect to existing trails and transit. From RTP moving east, the route will cross back to the north side of I-40 and continue along Wade Avenue to the pedestrian bridge over I-440 in Raleigh. The following rendering gives us a glimpse of what users will experience at the proposed pedestrian bridge at NC 54 and the general relationship of the path to the interstate.
So Iona, thank you for that fantastic video and excellent narration, and just good to see what the future of multimodal cross-regional mobility can be. So we're excited about that. And we're going to continue, in fact, with that same theme. Again, one more reminder, the entire agenda is available at letsgetmoving.org/I-40. We're going to switch from bikeways to buses, but still tying right back into the freeway piece in I-40, although we're going to jump to a different freeway here in just a moment. Rick Major with Go Triangle, our colleagues there. Take it away.
All right. Good afternoon. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate the opportunity to make this presentation on behalf of Go Triangle. First, I want to say good afternoon on behalf of Chuck Latuka, our President and CEO, Catherine Eggleston, our Chief Development Officer, and our Chief of Operations, Pat Stevens, is on this call, I believe. We're thankful to you, Joe, for RTA's leadership, also Brandon Jones, NCDOT, Meredith, and Dennis Jernigan. So we really appreciate the support that we're receiving from the business community. Next slide, please, Natalie. When you look at the problem is easy to see. If you've been in traffic and you see a Go Triangle bus caught in traffic on I-40 or one of the regional roadways, then you know that transportation is affected by this problem of congestion, because if our buses can't get to their destinations on time, then we lose the public confidence, and that becomes an issue with trust and reliability, and therefore people try to find other alternatives which contribute to the congestion that we experience on the roads. Next slide, please, Natalie. So in that sense, what is the solution? One of the solutions that we found recently was the I-40 bus on shoulder system, which we have partnered with NCDOT to collaborate with them to implement. And it has been a windfall for us, a godsend, if you will, because now our buses can depart the main roadway, and as you see in the picture, go off on the shoulder designated areas, and therefore expedite the trip and try to make their on-time performance. Next slide, please, Natalie. So why is that important? Because the objective is to keep our buses on time. It is imperative that we do so as part of this multimodal system that was discussed earlier, and Joe has so adequately discussed. We want to make sure that we instill trust in our public, and also take advantage of, so that they will take advantage of public transportation opportunities. Next slide, Natalie. All right, so finally, the process to get us to bus on shoulder on I-540 would be to have NCDOT go into an agreement with us, which we reached in June of this year. It's fully funded through CAMPO funding and also through Wake Transit Plan funding. We have an agreement so that NCDOT will provide the signage, and then we will provide the installation, and we plan to complete that installation in the October timeframe of this year. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Joe.
Sounds great. Well, we appreciate, Rick, your comments there, and we are very excited to see that move forward with congestion down a little bit. It hasn't been as essential, but we all know what's happening in this market as it continues to grow, and we don't want to wait until that's back in place before we start thinking about this. Appreciate the department's work and Go Triangle's work to make this a reality. And thank you for your remarks. We're going to continue with the bus on shoulder system theme, and our colleague Patrick McDonough from our RTA member HDR.
Thank you, Joe. Let's just get right into our executive summary of the bus on shoulder study that Campo sponsored. And we had great partnership from DCHC, Go Triangle, and NCDOT as study partners, but also from partners like State Highway Patrol as well. So next, please. So this is a 6-page document that really describes our study in a nutshell. I'm going to try to give you one takeaway from each of the pages and let you read more later. As we've heard a little bit from Rick and from Corey earlier, BOSS is currently operating from 15501 to about where Wade Avenue comes into 440 in Raleigh. When we did the study, we did a peer review. One of the most important things we found is that we are leaders. The Triangle and BOSS are one of the top 5 implementations by mileage of bus on shoulder in the United States. Next, please. Next, we took a look at a very metrical process that looked at how many corridors all over the region in both MPOs, how many trips did they attract, which had the longest rush hour delays, and which had lots of bus service on them, which would benefit from BOSS. And this map here, which you can dig into in the executive summary, shows you which ones are rated most highly. We have 75 miles of top priority for BOSS expansion and 139 secondary miles for BOSS expansion. So how can we do that? Next, please. We looked for a way to frame where improvements could be most synergistic with other investments that are being made in the Triangle region. And we would look at some of the transportation system mobility improvements, TSMO, being planned. We feel like putting BOSS and TSMO together allow us to double down on some of the benefits we heard Derek talk about with rent metering. Next, please. Finally, we've got a set of criteria that can be used to expand BOSS all across the state. So if a group wants to get together in Charlotte, Asheville, or Wilmington to do this there, they can do it too. Next, please. Finally, teamwork makes the dream work. These are the people who are putting it together here on the screen. We've been successful because they continue to work together, particularly with Meredith at the helm. Joe, it's back to you.
Patrick, that was awesome. That was awesome. I mean, the RTA phrase is, let's get moving. You did exactly that. That was terrific. And we are excited to be a partner for that as well, and looking forward to seeing the bus and shoulder system expand in this market and elsewhere. It's important to make sure that our freeways are serving transit in all modes. When we do that, the freeways are the highway backbone for all of us, and transit's critical. Speaking of that, our colleague Joe Furstenberg with DOT is going to talk about freeway and street-based transit. Joe, take it away.
Thanks, Joe. NCDOT, Go Triangle, and RTA partnered on the FAST freeway and street-based transit study aimed at making it easier for people to get to where they're going using a network of reliable, efficient public transportation and multimodal options. The study had a triangle focus, but included considerations for scalable approaches for transit across North Carolina's communities, urban and rural. The study included recommendations for improving North Carolina roads for buses and includes a statewide FAST implementation playbook that is hosted on NCDOT's website. This playbook includes quick, low-cost, scalable solutions for transit integration into transportation network to support mobility, improving transit and traffic performance metrics, and accessibility, addressing equity and access. Next slide, please. The playbook also includes a transit advantage matrix, which provides infrastructure and non-infrastructure improvements, even indicating which transit advantage solutions can be implemented in a short, medium, or longer time frame, as well as low, medium, and high cost considerations. Next slide. Following the completion of the FAST study, NCDOT has been working internally with the roadway design unit to incorporate the transit advantage opportunities into the NCDOT roadway design manual so that NCDOT staff and engineers have access to design guidance for these transit elements to include in the various stages of project planning, development, and implementation. Furthermore, the NCDOT Complete Streets Policy, updated in 2019, includes that NCDOT considers and accommodates for transit through planning, project development, in coordination with state, local, and regional stakeholders to ensure that North Carolina communities have access to safe, reliable, and efficient public transportation options. And I'll turn it back to you, Joe.
Joe, appreciate it. Appreciate your remarks. Appreciate the partnership on this study. Again, this was a study funded by the department, by Go Triangle, also received funding from Turnpike Authority as well. It shows a true broad commitment to using our freeway and street-based systems for transit and transit advantages. If you want to download this, you can see that information there. If you forget that site in the future, if you just Google NCDOT or go under ncdot.gov, just Google NCDOT Fast Vision, it will come up as well. So we really appreciate the partner with you all. And even this slide makes it even better, the new things that are coming. Let's move to the next section of our meeting. We have a couple presentations on traffic and funding, and we're excited to hear from both of those. The first is Dom is going to talk a little bit from the mobility and safety perspective about how we have recovered or not from a traffic standpoint as a result of the post-pandemic or extended pandemic coronavirus impacts. So Dom, take it away.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Good afternoon. I'm Dom Shimatero, the State Traffic Operations Engineer, and thank you for the opportunity to share with you today about the impacts of traffic during the past 18 months of COVID. Next. Last year, we presented on the changes of traffic from the pre-COVID period to this time from last year. The overall themes from last September were that across the Triangle region, traffic volumes and interstate congestion had decreased, crashes had decreased, and fatals had remained the same. Next. As for key takeaways for this year, we'll show you data that indicates that for North Carolina, volumes have returned across the state, but the Triangle's region's volumes are still less than the pre-COVID period. Also, interstate congestion is increasing, but not to pre-COVID levels. And for crashes, total crashes are trending higher than 2020, but are still lower than pre-COVID, and fatalities are trending higher than both pre-COVID and the 2020 periods. Next. This is a chart. This chart is a comparison of overall North Carolina volumes and the national volume data. You can see that North Carolina has followed the national trends. Next. For North Carolina, you can see the greatest drop in volumes were back in April 2020. Next. Here you can see the volumes just about returned from the months of April through July of 2021. Next. And we don't have all of the August data in yet, but we are seeing indications that the volumes may be trending lower again. Oh, I think we jumped ahead. That's okay. I'll jump to the next one. So this is one location example in I-40 in Wake County that shows traffic volume levels compared to before COVID. It's not necessarily indicative of all traffic volumes across Raleigh, though it does show similar trends. The top blue line shows the weekday average volumes in September 2019. The red line shows the volumes during September 2020. And the black line is for June of 2021. The data shows lower volumes and flatter peaks during 2020 as compared to the pre-COVID levels. And the 2021 line shows that the peaks are more pronounced during the peak periods. This location also shows that the volumes have not yet returned for the total volumes of 2019, which was the COVID or pre-COVID times. Next. This chart shows the percent of congested interstate roads within the region during the PM peak. Congestion is a good sense of when traffic is becoming heavy, because when a segment of road drops below 40 miles per hour, it usually indicates that there's not enough capacity to keep traffic moving at free flow speeds. So if there's 40% congestion, that means 40% of interstate road miles have traffic moving in less than 40 miles per hour. The top dotted blue line is for 2019 conditions. The solid blue line at the bottom is for 2020, and the middle green line are conditions during 2021. Next. You can see in April 20 that the percent of congested interstate roads dropped to 0%. And go ahead, stay put. During the summer of 2020, between the two white lines, you can see the percent of congested roads began to increase. It was still half of the summer of 2019 congestion. All right, next. As you follow the dark blue 2020 line to the green 2021 line, you can see congestion increasing and following the seasonality peaks and troughs of 2019, but not quite at the same levels of 2019. And go ahead, one more check. At the end of the green line, it indicates changes in August, which are not following the 2019 or the 2020 trends. Go ahead, next. This chart shows the volume trends of the arterials and their signal systems, and they are also representative of the statewide traffic trends. The white line shows the average of all the signal systems listed in the legend, and Raleigh and Cary are the lower blue and red lines. You can see that the overall North Carolina volumes have returned, as we showed in our previous North Carolina volume trends. For Raleigh and Cary, they are still less than 10%. The statewide trends are also reflecting the interstate freeway trends for the triangle. All right, next. All right, let's switch to crashes and fatalities. The top green line is for the 2019 period, the bottom blue line is for 2020, and the red line is for 2021. The total crashes for 2021 are higher than 2020, but are still less than the 2019 numbers. The 2021 trends are following the same 2019 curve. Next. However, fatal trends are not following the previous year trends, as fatal crashes remain the same between 19 and 20, even though the volumes of congestion have not returned. Fatalities are well above the 19 trends. Okay, go ahead, next. So to summarize, the trends between pre-COVID 2020 and 2021, volumes are returning for the state, but the triangle volumes have not quite returned, both for the arterials and the freeways. Congestion is returning on the interstates, but not quite to pre-COVID levels. Crashes have decreased since 19, and unfortunately, fatalities continue to increase. And we're keeping a close look at the data for August to see if the changes due to dynamic Delta variant conditions and effects, as well as how returning to in-person school and work will affect. Wow, look at that, right on the dot. There you go, Joe. Back to you. Next.
That was awesome. That was fantastic. I actually got a question for you, Dom. So the numbers about the fatals being where they are now, do you all have a couple cents of what's causing that and or what could ameliorate that?
So we knew back in 2020, it was speeds, right? There was less congestion, a lot less congestion. So when there's less congestion, people were driving faster, and there were less crashes because there were less people on the road, but they were having some pretty nasty crashes. This year, I can't speculate, Joe.
Okay.
Congestion's returning and fatalities are going up. So I can't answer it.
Okay. No problem. Just curious if you had some initial indications of it. That was all. Yeah. So hopefully that gets to a better spot, but the overall, in terms of overall what's happening, very good information. And this market definitely is technology based. We've written similar blogs as well on that likely being what's suppressing the traffic, particularly in the morning peak period is what we've seen here as well. We've talked about traffic. It's time to talk about funding. Even if you're not talking about funding, we need to be talking about funding. And so MD Cameron with the department, longtime colleague of this organization and others, and very well respected, is going to talk a little bit about the situation and opportunities to make both increase, but also modernize the funding picture. Take it away.
Thank you, Joe, for inviting me here today to give a revenue update. Next. As a brief overview, NCDOT is supported by three main sources of revenue: the gas tax, car sales, and DMV fees, in addition to federal funds. So this year, we're looking at a total budget of about $4.1 billion in revenues. And in addition to that, there are federal revenues. What we do know in the Senate package is North Carolina will receive, based on the formula allocations, about $280 million more than we would have received in 2021. And of course, the federal package includes tremendous discretionary funds that North Carolina should also benefit from. Next. So three agencies, OSBM, the General Assembly, and DOT, we come together to produce two forecasts, sometimes more, each year. So typically these forecasts are fairly in line with each other. I'm showing you here the impact of our two most recent ones. In February, this is what was used for the governor's budget. And then we have June, which will be used in the final budget. So this is showing about a growth rate of 2% a year. By the time we hit 2032, our state revenues will be growing all the way from 4.1 to 5.1 billion. Next slide. So the most significant change that we made in between these forecasts is that we downgraded consumption. So we'll discuss later, but of course, fuel economy is having a substantial impact on our revenue base. And in combination with EVs, you can see that was downgraded. And if you have been listening to the news, we're hearing a lot about car sales. Earlier this year, the CPI hit a 13-year high. But I don't know how many of you knew that a third of the inflation is due solely to car sales and the price of those cars being sold. Used car prices on a national level went up 27% year over year. New car sales went up 5%. And as a result, there have been significant reductions in the amount of cars sold. North Carolina, for the last year, has been immune to this. We hit an all-time record in 2021 with about 100,000 more cars sold than on an average year. And now one of the trends that we did pick up on that is unusual is that there's been a significant uptick in people buying used cars and fewer new cars. Next. So as I discussed, the reasons why we downgraded consumption, this is again fuel economy and next fuel economy and EVs. And on the motor fuel tax rate, we did have a slight reduction just due to a slightly lower projection of growth in the CPI that's used for the formula. Next. So this slide examines the impact of improving fuel economy over the next 10 years. So North Carolina's vehicle fleet has grown from an average of 20.3 miles per gallon to 22.9 in the last 10 years. So that is significant. So what this does is first on the chart on the left, that is telling you what the US government believes the combined fuel economy will be for passenger vehicles. Now, as I said, North Carolina fleet in 2020, it was not 24. It was about, we're running about 5% lower than that. So I used two charts to show the impact, gallons and dollars. So for you, I decided to use gallons. So this indicates, and we're talking purely from the increase in fuel economy when people are changing out cars. So you can see that the average driver is going to be buying about 60 fewer gallons a year by 2025. Now that's about $23 less per driver. So when you think about that in monetary terms, it is pretty significant. And that adds up when you do this on a cumulative per person to a loss of 1.8 billion gallons, fewer gallons sold compared to what would happen with today's fleet. And of course, that actually is just a rough little analysis to show you the extreme impacts of fuel efficiency, because I think we focus so much on electric vehicles, but right now this is my number one concern. Next slide. But that doesn't mean that electric vehicles aren't tremendously important to the security of future revenues. And you can see I've kind of divided up these 100% goals that some companies have come out with. So on one side, we see states coming and saying they want their fleets to be all EV. The next section is you have the manufacturers themselves. Jaguar is leading it with a 2025 directive. And then you see two things. You will be hearing right now about the conversion to EV. But pretty quickly, we're going to be moving from that to all cars being climate neutral. And so next, we're going to see the federal government's influence in this, especially with IIJA, to see what comes out of this in terms of the amount of money given for charging infrastructure. And then perhaps next week, when these various Senate committees start coming out, we could even see a incentive for electric vehicles. Just today, England came out and is changing its codes so that all new homes have to be equipped with electric vehicle chargers. So this is a quickly advancing industry that it may be a little bit over forecast with the extent to how quickly it will be coming, but it is certainly coming. Next. So very quickly, just to end, what do we do about this? I think there's a lot of different options. I think the three most likely is going to be a miles-based user fee. This is, I think, probably most favored as a new way of changing it because it's the user fee philosophy. This is really the main option to maintain that user fee change. NCDOT is active in studying this and piloting this. Next is a general fund transfer. And lastly is the potential of a dedicated sales tax. And while time goes on, that user fee philosophy is going to apply more and more to the sales tax. When you're thinking about the new economy and the new patterns of mobility will be taxed based on a sales tax, such as your Ubers and Lyfts, your deliveries. This is going to be a sales-based economy. So thank you. Next slide. I'm happy to take any questions, but it's been my pleasure.
Fantastic presentation and an important one certainly to end on, given how important funding is. Quick question for you. You showed three of the options that are there. Do you think it will be actually a combination of those or some other things, or maybe even something that none of us have heard of before? How do you see this playing out? And do you think it'll be different in our state than others?
I do think it will be slower. I've always said when I was at the legislature that it's important for the legislature to respect the national process. But I don't see North Carolina moving to anything beyond pilots for a miles-based user fee until there's much more movement around the country. I think there's a lot of support right now with increase in sales tax. But of course, we're always going to be dealing with political dynamics. But yes, I think North Carolina would not advocate for one or the other. I think what's most important to us is to have a lot more diversity and security that would come from that.
That's an excellent response with that. And just to build on your point about the sales tax, we have certainly in this market moved more towards a sales tax, at least on the transit side, with our referenda that were passed in 2011, 2012, 2016 in Orange, Durham, and Wake counties as respective. I think Durham was first there. So there's certainly precedent from a transportation and mobility funding standpoint. And then your point about the new economy, new revenues for that, I do see that moving forward as well. So really appreciate your remarks, Em, and thank you for that. And thank you to all of our presenters. I'm going to do some final closing remarks and make sure we end on time. I believe we're scheduled to end at 2:30, so we should be right there. A few final thoughts. Again, the entire agenda for today was available at letsgetmoving.org/I-40. And so you can download that. We are going to be posting the entire presentation on the website along with this recording. Will be on the website as well, that same one. In terms of some upcoming dates for RTA as the voice of the business community on transportation, we have our 20th annual meeting on November the 4th. It'll be a luncheon. So more to come on that, but you can actually register even now for that. And the website for that 20th annual meeting is literally just letsgetmoving.org/20. And then as for learning more about mobility, really this whole presentation was a number of great partners and great and frankly very dedicated professionals from across the public sector that are trying to make it easier for us to get from here to there so much better. Another thing we want to do as a business community in concert with our partners is learn from other markets. And so we are going to do a tour to South Florida. That's Miami, that's Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach. They have multiple sorts of rail system initiatives. They have different innovations going on. They're building bus rapid transit as we speak. A lot to learn from. Just like this market where we have 3 counties in a row connected by I-40, they have 3 counties in a row connected by I-95. So a lot of similarities with that market. You can go to letsgetmoving.org/South Florida and learn more about the tour. Registration is not open yet, although pre-registration is, or you could just email me directly at joe@letsgetmoving.org and I can tell you more information. Pricing is not been finalized yet, but that will be happening very, very soon. You've got also more information in the chat. Natalie, my colleague, has put some more information about that too. And so you can have that there. So Natalie, I think there's no other logistical remarks from you if I'm reading your text properly from that. I did get a note from Meredith, just again, appreciate everyone's partnership, longtime partnership between NCDOT, RTA, our regional, municipal, and other partners, RTA members who've presented and other members who are constantly supporting this organization and the region. We're a few minutes early, but we are fine with leaving at this time. So everyone have a great afternoon and a great weekend, and let's get moving.
Thank you, Joe. Good job.